is the mainstream media constantly lying about the Hunter Biden story. Now, this is for CNN, and this was repeated as fact so many different times. And you had CIA, which we know is embedded in our media. They would say, CNN would say, oh my God, we got the CIA analysts on, and people would think they're getting neutral news. So look at this former director of national intelligence, James Clapper. He said, to me, this is just a classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. Pretty much saying the Hunter Biden laptop was fake. Glenn Greenwald, he has a lot to say about the story because I don't know if you guys remember, he quit The Intercept because The Intercept censored him on this story. They were claiming it was Russian disinformation, it was hacks as well. Now, this is very relevant because when you see the Twitter leaks, which we'll probably go over it when we have more time later, you see this conversation between the Twitter executives when they knew they was wrong. They knew that this Hunter Biden laptop story didn't come from a hack, and they used that lie that comes from the national intelligence agencies in order to justify banning the story, because then they say, oh, well, it's a hacked story, so it goes against our hacked information policy. Now, this is what we all know. We covered this before. There's the receipt where even CBS admit copy of Hunter Biden laptop data appears genuine. Independent experts find. So now we have questions, and we have some questions for quite some time. So we know that Twitter played a role in suppressing the story, but the question always been how? Like, what mechanisms was used to censor this? Now, it was shown that, yeah, for one, the Biden administration did directly have ties to this story. Not only that, this is the big corruption story that I see regarding this. And there's a coordinated effort coming from progressives, the same Bernie people. I'm gonna show you guys some receipts here soon, where they're trying to pretend that this is a big nothing burger. I remember clearly when Bernie Sanders ran, we used to call out money in politics, and we used to call out pay to play corruption. We used to call quid pro quo politics. Now that this corruption is being exposed, people are pretending it's not a big deal. So you had this Twitter executive, as exposed by the leaks, Vijaya God, she played a key role in suppressing the October 2020 Hunter Biden laptop story. And then she was later appointed by the Biden administration to an advisory role. Do you guys see how that's directly connected? So she censored the Hunter Biden laptop story at Twitter so Joe wouldn't get bad press before the election. Then after, Biden made her the advisor of the Department of Homeland Security. And in that role, she worked to fight against misinformation. This is out in the open corruption. And now the progressives, not only do they not care, they are apologizing for it. Now, I'm going to show this last video clip, and I'll pass it to you guys, Jimmy and CJ, for reactions. This is a video from the debate where Biden said, without any hesitancy in his voice, that the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake. So you have Biden working in collusion with the government because they knew what they was telling Twitter. They had Reddit. Pretty much all the big social media websites was censoring this story. Biden knew that, so he came out and lied to justify. So let's play this clip and I'll give you guys a reaction to this.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation at a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes. I know you'd ask it. I have no response. Another smear campaign. It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. The vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
Oh, there you go.
Is it me?
I'm sorry. Let me
so say all of that. I was like, wait a minute, my headset on. Go ahead, Nick.
Might be acting up sometimes. So let's take this. We can take this part with a grain of salt because I dive in. This does have a little bit of conservative bias in it, but there's still a lot of truth in here. It said 1 in 6 Biden voters would have changed their mind if they had known the full story, and this is regarding the corruption between the Hunter Biden laptop. So this was definitely a coordinated effort by the media and big tech to influence the election. And Biden, knowing that, went out and continued to spread this lie. So I want to get Jimmy, I want to get CJ in here. Any initial reactions on how the media colluded to censor the story and how, despite them pushing Russiagate, they are the number one people who interfere and shape elections. So Jimmy, CJ, any take that you guys have on this?
Yeah, I'll let Jimmy go first and then I'll go.
It's just, again, I just keep coming back to this saying Chris Hedges when he said that they lie, cheat, and steal now, and they do it right out in the open. And so they're censoring accurate information for a political end, and they're pretending like every dictator, they pretend they're doing it to protect you, all right? And so the Democrats, as they scream we're fighting fascism, are using fascism to fight fascism. And so, just as Nietzsche said, don't become a monster. While you're fighting monsters, make sure you don't become a monster. Well, the Democratic Party and people who vote Democrat are now supporting monsters, right? They are the fascists. They are the censorious. They are the ones who are spreading not only misinformation, but disinformation on purpose, and they're smearing and suppressing actual information, accurate information. So this idea that somehow the Democrats are on the good side, right side of history, or that they're the good guys, I thought we were all over that idea 7 fucking years ago. And here we are back again having to re-litigate this over and over and over with people who used to stand shoulder to shoulder with us against this kind of corporate corruption.
That's what I was.
CJ, I give you thoughts on this, and I'm gonna show you guys the media reactions to this, the liberal reaction, which is gonna be funny. But CJ, any thoughts on what I shared thus far?
Yeah, no, just to piggyback off what Jimmy was saying, and think about all the things, because they're boasting now about, Democrats are, that is, oh, we got young voters that come out and vote, like as if it was the Democrats that got it and not the lies. Just think about how the Democrats won or staved off a red wave. Student loan debt, didn't they lie about that? They set that up to fail. Then we had the pardons that didn't take anybody out of prison. That was a lie. The railroad tentative deal meant to push the strike breaking past the midterm so it wouldn't affect. And then you already know the tons of war propaganda. I just wanted to make that point that Democrats are using just outright lies that are falling apart right after the election. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so the last part of the story, and then we can talk about the railroad strike a little bit before we get Jimmy out here. I want to show you guys, the funniest thing is, Jimmy, you talk about all the time, these liberal goons in the media, Glenn does as well, who are obsessed with censorship because they are Democratic Party operatives. They're not journalists. They think they're journalists. What they do on every single story, me and Glenn was talking about this. Every story, they just put a Democratic Party spin on it, and then they call it journalism. they repeat State Department talking points on war, and they have a CIA spook that feed them information, and then they say they're doing journalism. So hold on, let me get you in, Jimmy.
You play in that clip you played. There's Joe Biden quoting the head of the CIA. Like, as a Democrat, that's not supposed to be your flex. You're supposed to pretend to not trust the CIA. You're supposed to pretend, but the mask is off now, right? And so now everybody. I mean, Joe Biden is more of a right winger than Donald Trump. Certainly when it comes to the military-industrial complex, certainly when it comes to screwing over black and brown people and putting them in fucking prison. I mean, Joe Biden, the fact, and they found the one guy who was possibly the bigger liar than Donald Trump, which is Joe Biden. If you know anything about Joe Biden, he had to drop out of the presidency because he was such a big fucking liar in the 80s. I grew up seeing this guy lie on television. He said he was in the top of his class. He was the most outstanding student. He graduated with 3 degrees. He wasn't in the top of his class. He was in the bottom of his class. He wasn't voted the outstanding student. He didn't have 3 degrees. He even fucking made up he went to a college he never went to. And now he's running around telling people his kid died in Iraq over and over. His kid didn't die in Iraq. He just keeps and that's why the Washington Post stopped having we're going to keep track of lies. They only kept track of Donald Trump's lies. They're not and so why is this? So what is it about Donald Trump that they hate? As Aaron Matei says, they hate that he puts an ugly face on empire. And so when you got a guy who says grab him by the pussy and he's an obvious fucking used car salesman, he's bad to sell empire with. He wants to sell the vaccine. They won't let him. They can sell more vaccines with Demented Joe. And so they ostracize him. They don't want him part of the vaccine thing, even though he developed it and he wants credit for it. So that's why they hate Donald Trump. It's not because he legislated any differently than they did. His biggest accomplishment wasn't giving people health care. His biggest accomplishment wasn't ending the wars. His biggest accomplishment wasn't the living wage. He didn't even build the wall, which, by the way, Joe Biden is finishing in Arizona. What he did was he gave a tax cut to millionaires and billionaires, just like they all did. So why do they hate him? And that's exactly why. Because every once in a while, not only would he tell he would tell an accidental truth. What's that, Jimmy? Like when they go, hey, why are you leaving troops in Syria? And Donald Trump would go, for the oil. They're like, you can't say that. That's not what. Yeah. They're like, no, it's for the oil. We're taking the oil. It's our oil. And they're like, get him out of here. We got to get this guy out of here. The president of the United States is telling the truth about our foreign policy. Get that fucking guy out of here. Call him a Russian. Call him a white supremacist. Call him any fucking thing. Put the FBI in his closet. You got to get this fucking guy out of there because he just told everybody the point of our fucking foreign policy is to rape poor brown countries and steal their natural resources.
Yes. Now I remember when calling out the intelligence communities that we mentioned earlier, make sure you're a leftist. Now I do so. They say, "Oh, look at Nick, he's a right-wing Putin apologist grifter." That's what they call you now if you don't believe whatever the intelligence community say. And CJ, what do I say on this show? As someone who analyzes foreign policy, the best advice I have for you guys, whatever the CIA says, whatever the Pentagon say, assume it's not true until proven with hard, overwhelming evidence. That has served me, and I'm sure Jimmy, really well throughout our time as commentators. Now, I'm going to show you guys, back to the original point, the media reaction because these little authoritarians that call themselves reporters, the Democratic Party stick offense, they are now seeing the power that they have on the giant platform, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well, start to deteriorate. Twitter as well, because you got Elon Musk, who's a partisan billionaire who wants to see the Democratic Party brought to their knees. So he's doing a good thing to challenge the Democrats, right? Which is good. I take it, right? So they are melting down. So let me get into the receipts. I think I prefaced this, and I had quite a few funny ones for you guys. I'm gonna share these, and I'll give you guys a reaction. This receipt right here is look at the date here, December 3rd. This is how the mainstream media, and I looked at CNN, I looked at MSNBC this morning. I don't know what the update is now because that was like a few hours ago, but their headline, avoiding this story at all costs. And they are ignoring the direct quid pro quo corruption I exposed earlier. We had what was her name, Vijay, something like that. She censored for Twitter, and then she got a buy-in job, which is corruption. And the fact that you guys meddled in the election, you guys banned reporters, people literally on Trump's team over a story that was true, and it showed throughout the leaks that you guys lied about why you did it. So now the media is trying to pretend that this story is all about Hunter Biden's dick. That is what they were trying their best to deflect to that. So this headline says, no, you do not have the constitutional right to post Hunter Biden's dick pic on Twitter. Completely ignoring the context. This is the middle of the election. Twitter has worked with the Biden administration to lie about this and delegitimize the New York Post's reporting. And then the Biden administration and his media allies will come out and quote said Twitter policy as a reason why it's disinformation. So now this is Dan Cohen. This is the headlines I was looking for. This is New York Times. After fanning COVID fears, China must try to ally them. Then you had the Washington Post with a Ukraine story here. So they're trying their best to avoid talking about this bombshell leaks. And I also saw these people who are quote unquote journalists who work at corporate news, who are quote unquote independently minded. They was repeating this line ad nauseum, saying that Matt Taibbi is doing PR for the richest men.
Yeah.
He's doing PR for the billionaires. And I'm pulling this up because if you Google PR, world's richest man, this guy put a compilation of them together. You see all these blue shit libs on Twitter repeating that imagine volunteering to do the online PR work for the world's richest man on Friday night. This comes from Mehdi Hassan. He reports on MSNBC trying to play the moral high ground, say, oh, look at Matt Taibbi doing propaganda for the rich. And you see there's so many of these blue check liberals. This is Gritty calling him out as well. Ben Collins is one of those guys who was having a massive meltdown. This guy said, imagine throwing it all away, talking about Matt Taibbi's reputation. And Matt Taibbi spent his entire career calling out the media establishment regarding Russiagate, regarding war. So I don't know what you're talking about here. But
I think that's Jimmy wanted to chime in.
Oh, yeah, go unmute it, TJ, if you don't mind. Go ahead.
No, but I forgot what I wanted to say. But again, it's this magic sleight of hand where people like Mehdi Hassan, who spent his entire life, a professional career, sucking the cock of corporate billionaires, and then he gets to and lying at their behest and smearing actual journalists like Cy Hirsch and people like that, which is what Mehdi Hassan does. By the way, he couldn't be more anti-gay, just like Joyanne Reed, and then they have to cover it up. Just like when Joe Biden got incredibly accused of rape, they had to pretend that #MeToo didn't mean what it meant. And so it is quite a sleight of hand when Matt Taibbi, again, they don't talk about that Matt Taibbi is telling the truth. They talk about the truth is going to hurt my political side, and so journalists shouldn't tell that truth. And so that's why all my friends in Hollywood ended up hating me, because I wouldn't stop telling the truth about Hillary Clinton, even if they thought it was going to help Donald Trump. And I'm like, well, she should have thought about that when she did the Pied Piper theory, and she wanted to run against Donald Trump, and she had her friends in the media elevate Donald Trump. Nobody ever talks about any of that, right? And she was the one who propped them up. They were the one that cheated Bernie, and so maybe they'll really regret it next time. Well, that's not how things work in Hollywood. That's not how things work in the world. That doesn't matter. You have to go along with the corruption of the establishment, just like Bernie Sanders does and Elizabeth Warren and the squad does. And if you don't go along with that, then you're a bad person and you're a right-winger. And I'm sorry, journalists are supposed to tell the truth. Matt Taibbi's got a hot story about corruption at the highest levels, about the government colluding with private corporations to censor American citizens illegally against the First Amendment. That's a huge story, and the fact that they don't want to talk about it just shows the level of corruption in our country. You know, I will always talk about how the people who run this country, they all share the same interests, and they're the ones doing this to us, and they're the ones who are pulling the strings. And people always go, oh, really, Jimmy? Well, where's the room that they all get together, all these rich people, and have meetings? I go, it's called a session of fucking Congress, you moron. What do you think? Whose bidding do you think they were doing yesterday when they voted to fuck over railroad workers and not even give them sick days? One of the most profitable companies in the history of the world, these railroad companies making tens of billions of dollars a year, can't afford to give people sick. That's called fucking fascism right there. That's a meeting of the people's representatives. They represent a handful of billionaires. They get together. It's called a session of fucking Congress, you assholes. And if that isn't enough, they have the Bilderbergs, and they have fucking Davos, and then they have the World Economic Forum, and then they have the WHO. These are all fucking billionaire funded cabals that rule our life, and now they're going to give us digital IDs so they can turn off our fucking bank accounts the minute we want to protest, like the truckers in fucking Canada. And now it's coming out that the government had to lie about the truckers, just that they have to lie about fucking everybody. They had to lie about the truckers and say they were violent and racist. And so anybody going against the, I don't know if you've noticed that, anybody who goes against the status quo, the establishment status quo, since Trump, is now a white supremacist and a racist. And I hope that that loses its power pretty soon, because it's bullshit. I've been called a white supremacist racist. I said, why? Because of my fucking position on COVID. I'm like, what? How could being for the truth about COVID, how could telling the truth about ivermectin be seen as fucking right wing? Is a medicine right wing or left wing? It's the craziest, because that's just like you said at the top of the show. That is all they have left because both parties are the same. Why do you think the Democratic Party talks about how the Republicans and Trumpers are fascists, and then they take their own money, the Democrats, and give it to them in the primaries? They fund the most right-wing fascist fucking maniacs in the world so they can run against them. Why do they do that? They do that because if they ran against a regular Republican, there's no fucking difference, and everybody knows it. So they have to find somebody who's crazy on social issues, cultural issues to run against, because they're exactly the same when it comes to war, when it comes to workers, when it comes to incarceration, when it comes to drug policy, when it comes to Wall Street, all that shit. They're exactly the same. When it comes to immigration, too, by the way, there's no fucking difference between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Not at all. The only difference is that Biden is more effective at getting these things done. Now, I'll be real quick, and CJ, I know you have something that you want to share to Jimmy, so I'll be real quick to wrap my segment up, and then we get to the rail segment. This is Glenn calling out some more people. You see Chris Hayes once again. They're attacking Matt Taibbi, ignoring the context because it hurts them, pretending that he's doing PR for the richest man. This Chris says, and watching some of the most famous, most powerful, richest men red pill themselves into disaster. So I'm glad that Glenn called him out because these people who do no journalism at all calling out Matt Taibbi for breaking this massive story. So just to speed this up, this is a big Bernie guy. He hang out with a guy with MSNBC contracts. In response to this massive story, instead of talking about the corruption, he's like, "What about Trump?" That's what he said. He said, "Why are you talking about Hunter Biden instead of Trump?" Those are the progressives we have. Now, the last thing I'll share, and I'll pass to you, CJ, before we get Jimmy out of here. This is showing the connection between our entire media apparatus. It is a class war. It's one big club, and you're not part of it. I'll just read a little bit of it, because there are a lot of examples here. But an ABC's News executive producer is married to Susan Rice. The CBS president, David Rhodes, is brother of Ben Rhodes, Obama's national security advisor. ABC News correspondent Claire Shipman is married to White House Press Secretary Jay Carney. Now, just for a second, I could read more, but this is a giant club. They all know each other, and this is what a capitalist dictatorship looks like. So for them, the people who report on MSNBC, the people who watch MSNBC, the people who subscribe to the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, is saying that Matt Taibbi is doing PR for the billionaire class. How funny is that? So that's my last on this story. CJ, I will pass it to you, unless you have any last thoughts on that, Jimmy.
No, it's funny to see people who work for Jeff Bezos try to point the finger at someone else for working first. This is crazy.